All right, let's get started on the topic at hand, which we are working on the hydration strategy, but we're talking about the specifics of testing for hydration. We can talk about hydration till we're blue in the face of you gotta make sure you're hydrated on your race, make sure you're drinking fluids on the bike, make sure you're drinking fluids on the run, make sure you're hydrated the weeks before, the days before. But if you don't know a hydration target that you're looking for, then you're going to be in a situation where you could be underhydrated, overhydrated, or if you're lucky, you're like right in the middle and you're perfectly hydrated. But there is a better way to understand what you need because we're all different. Personally, I am a profuse sweater, a very salty sweater. So my condition could be a little bit different than somebody else. It's maybe doesn't weigh as much as me, not as big as me, shorter person, smaller person, or larger person, and they sweat a lot more than me. So knowing what you individually do as far as sweating goes, your sweat rates, and it's separate from the bike and from the run, and temperature, conditions, humidity, that can all factor into it. If you don't know how you respond in these conditions, you cannot plan your race accordingly. And once you get to that run, especially when you get into the longer distances, the 70.3s, 14.6, and run yourself into the ground. And by the time you get off that bike and you start to run, you're already in the hole. And you run yourself straight further into the hole until you get to the finish line, hopefully, and don't end up in the mid. So you want to consider races like Boulder 70.3. That is in August, and Boulder can get kind of warm. It was in June 2018 when they had, or yeah, 2018 when they had the full. It got to 100 degrees in June in Colorado and Boulder. That was crazy. So you do need to be ready for any kind of conditions. You need to know what your body needs in order to make that race happen. There's a couple different ways of doing the testing. There's professional tests. You can order something online, do a little vial of your sweat, and they'll analyze for all the consistency, all the parameters, and your balance of pH, minerals, electrolytes, all this other stuff, and the consistency of your fluid to tell you kind of what you're sweating out. So there's manufacturers of different kind of mixtures and hydration and sports drinks people that can give you a tailored specific blend to whatever your situation is. And I think there's a few brands out there that actually offer the test to do that kind of stuff. So it'll give you a good listing of what's the consistency of your sweat, but it may not give you the exact sweat rates you're looking for. So there are those out there that can kind of help you out, but we're going to more talk about what you could do yourself to make sure that you're ready for race day. Again, this goes back to my background as being an engineering and kind of a spreadsheet geek. Tracking this information, I do it for my athletes. All the stuff we're going to talk about, I've got a spreadsheet where I've put in rows, columns, tracked all this stuff over time so we can find out what the athletes do in training conditions that lead to racing conditions and what they can do to make sure that they're prepared for race day. So do-it-yourself method. So basically, you want to weigh yourself before you do your workout, and you want to weigh in whatever you're going to wear afterwards is what you weigh yourself in before. I recommend I use Under Armour shorts underneath my tri-suits and gear and stuff. I recommend as little clothing as possible because one little key is you got to wipe that sweat off. So if you've got a tri-kit you're wearing before and after, and it's not very good at moisture wicking or evaporation or anything, it's trapping in moisture that gives you an incorrect weight at the end of your workout. So as little clothing as possible. Hey, if you want to do it naked, just don't send me pictures or videos. I don't want to see that kind of stuff. Make sure the blinds are closed. Doing naked's the best because you do want to wipe your hair off. You don't want that sweat, sitting in your hair because it's not in your body anymore. You want to measure what is not in your body anymore and it's in your hair, then you still need to dry your hair off. But anyway, whatever you wear, you need to wipe down as much as possible to get all that sweat off. So what you wear before and after needs to be the same when you're on the scale. So make sure you're not wearing shoes and socks or anything like that when you're weighing yourself after, or any extra gear, a headband, whatever. Make sure it's exactly the same to give you the most accurate information possible. So do your workout. Any workout we'll kind of do. Just make sure that usually over an hour is kind of the better point of information that you can get a good, accurate plotting of workouts over time. Anything less than an hour, typically you're not really getting really into the meat of what your body's got to do over time to process to make sure that you're staying cool. But you could do it over intense workouts. You could do it zone 2 workouts. You could do it just the longer bike rides, shorter bike rides, strength work, whatever. Just focus on runs and bikes. You're tracking this hopefully in a log or a spreadsheet or anything like that. I highly recommend like spreadsheet, Google Sheets, something that's always there. You can use it for information, calculate stuff later. I'm going to develop one of my own and put it out there. Like I said, I've got this for my athletes, so that's where I'm going to develop mine from. Potentially share it out there with everybody else doing the virtual groups. So basically, you want to track your weight before, your weight after, the type of workout, if it's intense, if it's strength work, if it's just a straight zone 2 ride. That's good information to have, because the more intense you work out, the more you're probably going to sweat. You want to keep track of the conditions. So you want to track whether it's a run, whether it's a bike, the average. Where'd it go? Track conditions. There you go. Little bullet point, should be a bigger bullet point. Well, track conditions. What's the temperature? What's the humidity? Was it cloudy? Was it overcast? Was it sunny? All these things kind of factor in, and especially, one plot point isn't very good. Multiple plot points over time gives you a lot more accurate information. And if you dice this about those points, the better you can go back and do more historical information about those types of workouts. Then you can gear towards what your race you're doing. If you're doing Boulder 70.3 in the middle of August, not very humid, could be kind of hot. So if you're looking at your forecast a couple weeks down the road, you see it's going to be, 85, 90 degrees on race day, but there's only 25% humidity. You can go back and sort your information and look for low humidity, high heat. How did I do? And even if you're doing indoor workouts, you could track this stuff. If you have a Nest, you can go and check out. You can even do it, like for me, my pain cave where I do my workouts is in the basement, so it's a little bit cool in the rest of the house. So you got to take that into consideration. The temperature listed there may not be the temperature where you're at. You can always drag down some heaters and increase the heat and stuff like that. So if your race is in warmer weather, but you're tracking information when it's cooler, you can do different things to kind of up the heat and check that out. During your workout, try to avoid having to pee, because basically you're using fluid and it's not used for cooling. It's just exiting the body, and it kind of throws off the information. So try not to pee during your workout, but want to keep track of any fluids that you drink during a workout. So I know for me personally, in the mornings, I just roll out of bed and I try to do my morning workouts. So I take with me, a little 12-ounce bottle of my hydration mix. So you got to take that into account. Did you drink the whole thing? Did you drink half of it? Did you drink none of it? So you got to subtract that out, because that's added weight to your body, but it's not helping you cool your system. So it's kind of throwing off the numbers. So you need to subtract that out. So then you can use this information to calculate your loss per hour. If you track how long your workout is, what the intensity is, what the conditions were, what your weight was before and after, how much you drank. Hopefully you didn't pee during the workout, so you can figure out what is your loss per hour. So later on, we'll get into what does that lead to, but you want your loss per hour. So you could average now in the off season. Now's the time to really track this information over time. So like I said, having a few weeks before a race is good information to have. If you can get a couple workouts, a handful of workouts where you can get this information. I have my athletes track it as much as possible. Weigh yourself before and after, put it in Training Peaks. That way I have it, so I can put it in little spreadsheets over time and give a good picture of where you're at. Like I said, you want to track it per bike and run, so you don't just want to have a workout and then sweat before and after. It's like when you go back and think, was that a run? Was that a bike? It's going to be different. Different modalities, different muscle groups being incorporated. You're still using your legs, but running, typically you're going to sweat a little bit more than biking. Especially, you want to keep track, are you biking outdoors or indoors? Are you running indoors or outdoors? If there's a breeze or something like that, it's going to cool you off a little bit more. But if you're biking inside in a trainer, unless you have a fancy, was it the Wahoo, whatever, not the climb, the wind thing that's hooked up to your bike and changes the wind speed. If you don't have a breeze to help cool you off, then that kind of changes things. But if you're outside and it's kind of windy, then that helps cool you off. But if you're riding outside in general, just the wind blowing by you will help cool you off a little bit too. So keep track of that information too. So we're going to average that over multiple workouts, separate out for bike and per run, so you get kind of an average picture that you can use to incorporate your training later. The ultimate goal is when you come off that bike ride, half a full, whatever your race is, you want to be about 2 to 3% max dehydrated. If you're coming off a bike and you're higher than that, just ask Lionel Sanders from 2019 World Championships. You can watch his video where he says he completely spaced it out. He came off, he figured he was about 9 to 10% dehydrated coming off a bike. You're already there. There's no way on the run that you're going to, unless you're walking and drinking at every aid station. That's going to be a long, painful way to finish a race. You're going to keep going down the hill, become more and more dehydrated, getting into that critical zone where you could end up in the medical tent. You could end up injuring yourself and getting sick, which we don't want to do that and causing permanent damage. So the goal is 2 to 3% dehydrated. So that's what you're trying to replace per hour. About 90 to 95%, especially on the bike. When you get to the run, it's kind of whatever you can tolerate, because there's no way you're going to bring enough fluids, like I said, unless you're walking, to really replace what you're losing on the run. But this gives you a nice snapshot. So if you track this and you're starting it now, it's like November, and your race is in August, you could track this information. There's going to be plenty of warm, humid days, warm, non-humid days, especially like here in Kansas City, we get all kinds of weather. You're going to be able to look at race day, and you're going to be able to take this data and sort it out. You want, okay, it's going to be on race day, it's going to be 80 degrees, it's going to be 25% humidity. So I'm going to filter my information for 75 degrees and above, and humidity is at 50% below. And then you're going to see on the bike and on the run, here's kind of what my sweat rates are. This gives you great information to go later and plan your race. So then you can write out your plan. It's like, I want to drink two 12-ounce bottles of fluid per hour on my 70.3 ride. So that gives you great information. If you're tracking now over time, my one-on-one athletes, try to get them to do this on a consistent basis, to put in training peaks, what you're weight before and after. Did you drink anything? The conditions of the day, was it an intense workout? I can kind of see that kind of stuff. What the weather conditions were. Was it cloudy? Was it sunny? Was there lots of wind? Just as much information as you could possibly give me. So that way it's sortable later that you can find this information out and average it out and have good, accurate information, instead of just saying, well, my hydration strategy is to drink 5 bottles of water per hour on the bike and try to stay up with that and try to drink 1 bottle between aid stations or whatever. If you don't do a little bit of pre-planning now and take the time out to do the testing, especially in the off season when you're not doing as much volume, have a little bit more time, maybe develop a spreadsheet, or later if I can develop one and help all the athletes out in my virtual groups and my one-on-one coaching and memberships and everything, then you could go through and do some testing. Even now, you could just write it down a log. If you don't have time to do a spreadsheet, just have a notebook of just recording days and times and how much you're sweating, and just calculate on the side what the sweat rate was. And you could just even reference that later on. Like, up here, May 25th, it was pretty hot. It got 80 degrees and it was 75% humidity. Here's my sweat rate on that 60-minute run. It gives you good information that you can prepare for your races. So it's good for like 70.3 Boulder that's in August. It's good for 70.3 Torch City that's in August. It's good for Waco that's in October. So if you're training now, the conditions are pretty similar here in Kansas City to Waco it was this year. If you're doing 70.3 Chattanooga in May, the conditions, if you start tracking this stuff now, and especially if you do it year after year, you have this information to go back and figure out. And it's really not that difficult to at least track it down, get your sweat rate per hour, and then you can just go back and reference it anytime. It's pretty much that straightforward. So if you've got any questions, always reply back to the emails. You can send me notes, put comments in the videos, anything like that, and I'll try to get back to you. And we will talk to you next time.